All right, this is Jeff Cook. We're having another conversation, and she is the only person in my life that cusses more than I do and does so with far more skill and apparent practice. I'm with the singular Jackie Contessa. Welcome.
Thank you for that. I want to put that on my website.
That's a good bio description.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to chat.
So I want to talk about talking about the Enneagram. I have said this 5 times, and Jackie is still like, I don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Yep. Well, because you won't answer that question.
Because I'm a philosopher and we're talking about the Enneagram. That's what you talk about, yeah?
I'm excited. Let's do it.
So you work with single moms. Mm-hmm. I grew up with a single mom. Mm-hmm. I grew up in downtown Denver. And she worked multiple jobs. And I got the fun task of taking my 6 years younger than I brother to school daily. We were an easy target for midday break-ins. We got robbed so many times. And so there was a season in my life where my mom actually had me unplugging our VCR and television and hiding them in closets so that when people broke in, at least they didn't take our high-end
source of joy
video cassette recorder.
Yeah.
The first time that I had to do this, I'm pulling out the TV and it's in my lap, and the VCR is in my lap, and I'm trying to get the plug unplugged, and I couldn't do it. So of course, as kids are known to do when they need leverage, I place the plug into my mouth so that I can yank it out. Right, one of the prongs hits my lip, and I got a quick lesson in the power of electricity and had just the surge, and it felt like 5 minutes, but of course I'm sure it was like less than a second. And I dropped the television, I dropped the VCR, I get an electricity burn. I don't know what you call those, but the jolt, I can still remember this vividly. I can remember everything about this morning. I can't remember anything about my elementary school experience. I do remember getting shocked though, getting this current that hit me. There's something about my first real encounter with the Enneagram that it was a jolt. It was something that hit me. It was something that I was like, oh, damn. And I was, my sensory side opened up in a different kind of way for a minute. And I said to myself, I need to rethink this. And I especially said to myself, I think I need to talk to somebody about this. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you had a similar experience of Enneagram, but do you know what I mean when I say you got the jolt? Yeah. And do you know what it means to say, I need to talk to somebody about this?
I do. I felt that in my nuggets. I mean, so, okay. First of all, I'm very sorry that happened to you. And that story made my body hurt. Like the way that, when you watch Forrest Gump and your legs start cramping and your legs hurt. Yeah, that's how. Anyway, I'm sorry that happened.
On that one for a second.
Watch Forrest Gump, see how you feel. So I will say this. I was a little bit dual-sided. The excited part of me was like, oh my God. Look at this, guys. Let's all look at this. It's so fun. Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, that did take me a little bit because I had a lot of shame in what I read. I'm a 2, so I had a lot of shit. Like my heart felt full of bricks, and I felt like I wanted to distance myself from the things that I was seeing. Right? Keep that in mind when I say that even when it's fun and you feel super understood and you feel that jolt, it's one of those things that's like a little bit too real to not open your mouth and tell somebody else. It's a little bit too much to not tell other people. I like what Suzanne Stabile says this about 5s particularly, but I just think it's a great observation. No pun intended. She says that, 5s love to think that they're objective, but objectivity involves other people. And I think that there are just some parts of it that have to involve other people because they're too heavy to do alone. So is life, right? So I felt that jolt for a really long time. And actually, I think as we were talking about this before, I don't really have tons and tons of real life in person, as in not through the internet, people who know the Enneagram. Like the Enneagram's just getting pretty in New Jersey, but that jolt is real and needs to be listened to.
Are there in-person relationships still? I thought the internet did away with all that. It's like, we don't even need to see each other anymore.
They got canceled in 2020. We just do internet now.
That's right.
We just internet. Yeah. But that jolt is real. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the jolt and talking to folks. You, I imagine, are a fantastic coach and work with lots of folks.
Thanks.
There is something about the relationship that you share with people that you coach, however, that's intentionally by design. I'm sure this is actually part of the ethic, one-sided, where you are being encouraged to focus on them, move them, and there's the one-way conversation. And that's a sort of relationship with Enneagram. There's another sort, which I imagine you have the opposite experience, where I know that you have spoken with other people who are coaches down the road, and the roles are reversed. I love both those relationships. Both those relationships are very valuable. Perhaps we could even talk about those relationships in a minute. But I want to talk about what you were talking about before, where it's, what about the conversation with peers, the face-to-face relationships, the relationships that we have with folks who are generally about at the same level as us, and like we're learning things simultaneously, getting excited about things at the same time. I want to talk about those relationships because I think those relationships are some of the most valuable that we have. You know what I mean?
So you know how, like, if you start a business and you start posting content online for that business or start putting things out there for that business, one of the biggest lessons that you learn right away or that you'll get advised on is sometimes it's not your closest people that show you the most support in this area, right? And so I'm going to say that right off the top, right? It's not my closest people in my life, in my everyday life, who I talk to about the Enneagram. That does not mean that those relationships didn't need to be cultivated, to be found, and things like that, because it's really necessary. However, excitement is one thing. Like the people that I know here who do know the Enneagram, they're excited about it because they feel known, they feel understood, they feel seen. But that doesn't quite share the load when I have to learn how to not be manipulative from scratch. Right? So if I'm doing the work of learning how to not translate every single feeling into anger or something else, right? It's interesting how we do have to have fun conversations about it, but we also have to find ways to be able to have these discussions. And sometimes that means cultivating new or different relationships around the Enneagram, whether that's in person or the internet where everyone has friends and online forums and things like that, because there are some parts of, like, if you think about it, let's say you find the Enneagram when you're 20, when you're 30, something somewhere in between 40, 50. I mean, I've worked with clients across all ages, right? Like, one of the common things that they say, I said this myself as well, more or less, they say, like, it's crazy how this thing knows me to a T, and I've been hiding this from myself all this time. But it's so true. How are you going to do the work without other people? How are you going to get that sunscreen spot on your back without someone else? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
I suppose maybe it was my experience. So in addressing that, when coming to Enneagram, there were obviously teachers I'm learning from, but I don't know these people. I'm reading their books or I'm listening to their podcast, and then I'm talking to somebody else about it. And I suppose that's it. It's the processing of the thing. Verbal processor that I am. This is apparently important. It was the processing that is important. Have you had that experience where you go to a conference and the conference is great, but the thing you remember most is actually that you went out to the bar with your friends who also went to the conference and you talked about it for 3 hours, and that was the thing that you needed. I suppose that's how I end up engaging this material. It's the conversation after that is most important to me. I suppose, as I say it, I'm realizing, I wonder if that doesn't happen for other folks. So
I think that happens for everybody. I don't necessarily think that everyone goes looking for trying to. I mean, not everybody goes to the conference to begin with, right? I do think that, we read the books, we listen to the podcast. I did that for myself in a solitary way for a really long time, longer than I'd like to admit, before I started being like, I need Enneagram people because I can't do this. I say this all the time, knowledge is power, but it's not magic. Magic is spelled WORK. And I think once we start to feel you have enough knowledge, let's say you're a 1, and it starts to ping, 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 your anger. We're not talking about rage. We're not talking about you exploding, but the thing that goes, something's not right and something needs to change. Or if you're a heart type and that's shame, or like enough knowledge prompts us to start having these conversations with people. But that's okay. So it's not just about opening your mouth and having these exciting conversations, but what's happening at the bar when you guys are talking about, you're not regurgitating these speakers' notes from the conference. You're getting vulnerable. You're getting honest. You're talking about where it applies. So what is required with the Enneagram at all times is a specific type of vulnerability, sometimes levels of transparency. And there is a stretch of having to do that with other people. I mean, the first look at the Enneagram, that jolt is that vulnerability that you have to have with yourself to admit that this is true. I think, in my professional opinion. But I also think that like knowledge will start to be honest, bore the crap out of us and ferment in our stomachs until we, I think we'll get sick with knowledge and never doing anything about it. And sometimes it's going to the bar and talking to people after. Sometimes it's cultivating community. But maybe I'm saying this a little bit too boldly, but this is some of the most, within the Enneagram, this has been the map, to use your language, to some of the most important information I've ever learned about myself, how I do relationships, how I'll do anything, and why I've done anything. I can't take that lightly. I can't let that ferment in my stomach, and I can't get sick, right? So I think we all have our, skepticisms as to why we need each other, or where we can go with each other safely, or how we can, but at the end of the day, it's needed, or it's not going to do what it needs to do. It's just going to be silly information. And then take a BuzzFeed quiz. Like, who cares? But
sure.
Yeah.
It's seldom the case that as you're talking, what I'm hearing is like you go to the bar, and if something popped for you, it's probably not going to be the same thing that popped for the person next to you, because they're going to be a different type. And so if some little bit of Enneagram wisdom like kind of hit you in your type and that topic, that may be one of those places where you're just like, this is what hit me, but you're having to show here's my map and here's where I'm at, and you are going to have your pals are likely going to have a different map. But being able to talk about that process of, oh yes, on the map, dealing with this sort of topic, and what movement feels like, and the encouragement's there, and just getting a chance to share it. I mean, I suppose that's like, am I wrong in thinking that like any kind of, I want to call it therapeutic conversation between peers, but like talking about your emotional, relational life and health is probably going to have some of that going on, because you and I are in 2 marriages, and those marriages are very, very different from one another. But you could, like, if you and I wanted to, we could talk about quote unquote being married, or something like that. Or anyway, it feels like the topic of Enneagram is one of those things. It's like, it's, in my experience, like a magnet. It's something you commune over. It's something that if somebody invests themselves, understands the jolt, can come to the table, and the dialogue can take place. In my experience, that's been incredibly helpful. Obviously, I've had a conversation partner for many years on exactly this, and most of my growth has happened in that space. I suppose I want to make this all prescriptive and say, I really hope other people can find that sort of thing. What goes through your mind there?
Well, I kept hearing, like, in my head, the word shortcut. When I know that somebody speaks like the language of the Enneagram, it's like, you know, when I've traveled overseas and you finally find somebody that speaks English and you're like, oh my God, thank God. You know, and it's funny because like for example, I'm a coach in therapy and I'm in therapy and I love my therapist. I'm going to run away with her. And you know, she doesn't know the Enneagram. She doesn't know that language. And sometimes I find myself being like, girl, just because she doesn't quite know things, don't like sit there and over explain and try to over justify. Like, it's fine. And then let's say I talk to one of my coach friends about what's going on, and I will say, hey, so this tendency or whatever, this is really happening for me, and here's how it's happening. And I'm able to sort of cut these corners so that this person can understand and metabolize very quickly what I'm telling them and be objective enough to say something back to me if that's what I'm looking for, if I'm looking for advice or something like that. So it's a little bit of a shortcut in some ways. And this is not to discourage anybody who like is actively alone on the Enneagram. I can't tell you, and I don't just work with single moms, I work with tons and tons and tons of people. I can't tell you how many people come in and sort of do this alone. Maybe they chit chat about it with their spouse, right? But they're kind of in this journey alone. It's like sort of their special interest. And I'm the first outside of the house person they go to. And one of the big things we start talking about is, hey, we have to find some you adjacent friends who know this language, who can do this with you in their own way. Even if neither of you know enough about each other's type to solve the problems. It's a safe place to learn how to say, I am this about myself. And so I think it helps to, I use the phrase cut the noise. Like it helps to cut the noise out a little bit. And it's just, I keep going back to this. I know it sounds very trivial. It's just so highly necessary. Now, I think a lot of people might feel too like, oh, this is my special thing and it's, you know, my own. And I don't want to have people take it away. Or like, I've tried to bring it to people and they reject it or they're not really interested. Like I can't even tell you how many times it's like, my boyfriend won't use the Enneagram. I'm going to be honest. I didn't know my husband's type when we got married. I had my suspicions for sure. But I didn't know until after because it was his journey. And when he was ready, I think we were like 4 months married and he was like, I'm ready. And I was like, okay. I like, get my laptop before the 7 changes his mind. But you know, it still can be a little bit lonely sometimes, but I have to make sure that I'm not putting this, man, some people around me don't quite want to speak this language. I don't want to put that in front of my mind. I have to go find who does speak this language with me so I can grow. Like, it's not about the other people. It's about finding who you can do this with because it's necessary to do this with other people.
That you're bringing up something that's been like just a strong intuition for me recently, that learning your type may be the worst first move. The first move may be learning the language, may be better in terms of saying, let me paint a canvas of what the basics of this are.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like? So like, let's say we don't want to learn our type first, but what do we want to learn?
Yeah. So often we get brought in, let me take it back to work, but so often we get brought in by somebody asking us loaded questions. They're seeking to place a number on us and then we're handed a number and then that's the win and they can take off now because they got us to where we need to be at the front door.
Sounds like a test. Just kidding.
Right. Perhaps a better way to do this is to talk about just how we all come to the world in very, very different ways, and naming those ways can be very helpful, and categorizing those ways could even be more helpful. So many of us will know people who are overly analytic, that they come to the world with a head first deductive posture, and just naming that about them. This is part of their personality, and you roll through things in terms of some who are more emotional, some who are more focused on getting things done and physically engaging their spaces, or some people are more assertive, some people are more withdrawn, and just like talking about how we can name some types of people, and once you can understand the person in front of you, or once you understand that people just, their types are different, you can probably relate to them in a better way. And what becomes most interesting is when you take that observation and you apply it to yourself and you say, I wonder what type other people experience when they encounter me. So let's talk about you. So you like set up the language at first, and then you pivot toward the typing. And these may need to go hand in hand, but so often the language itself is lost. The number is all that matters. And I think learning the language needs to at least come in tandem with folks, as it were.
When you say learning the language, the first thing that comes to mind, tell me if I'm off track here, is I know another two, for example, and I probably could not get this person to admit that they this person will confidently like type other people because that's the fun part, and being like, oh, this person looks like this person looks like this stereotypical archetype, this person looks like this, will not do like a literal like lick of work, will not like look into anything deeper than Pinterest Enneagram. And so it's like very much like, I think I said this earlier or off recording, I'm a 2, so I'm super, super helpful, and I always neglect myself. And I'm like, are you manipulative? I could not get this person to admit that they're manipulative. And no. So I'm like, oh, so you meet your own. So how do you meet your needs? Well, I don't feel like I do. Okay, so let's talk about how you're manipulative then, because it just is. So we do need to learn, I think, some of the language, but I do think that's surrounded by type. I don't know how to remove the astrology-like quality from types, but learning types is so highly, like, your type is so highly important. However, I will say this too, like, sometimes you can solve a 7 problem in a 6 if you can think about where that started in the 6. Does that make sense? And so in that case, I do think like we can be like, yeah, there are types of people. There are types of people who do this. I do think finding type is so important, but I also think not avoiding what you need to do with the Enneagram because you want to make it fun.
Right.
This is just my thought. I'm trying to like not be mean, right? We can't just take away how important it is for people to know where they start just because some people never go anywhere from their
That's fair.
Name and byline. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As I'm saying it, I feel like I'm selling talk about the language before type a little too hard. It may be the case that when you learn tennis, you're handed a tennis racket and you're learning about the lines and how to hit a ball both at the same time. But those go together.
I conceptualize, like, for example, that being, let's say we're at a workshop and someone's like, here are concepts, here are concepts, here are concepts, here are types that make these concepts make a little bit more sense. Like, introducing information in that way, I think is like palatable, sure. But I do think ultimately, like, starting with type, meaning don't leave that first workshop without at least talking about type. Like, I do think everyone has to have their sparkly, magical, I'm obsessed with being my type and I have to share all of the memes. Like, we have to have that until, until we get into a relationship that we don't want to be in and we realize that we're manipulating everything just to keep ourselves here, even though we don't actually want to be here. We're just scared to be alone. And then we can't just share memes about, I'm scared that I won't be loved. Sparkly pit. Like, right. You know what I mean? So I do think we need to have our moments, but like learning your type is so important. That is honestly, I don't do this with everybody. I don't do this all the time. I have boundaries. But when people are like, I have a very, very quick question. I am between these two types. And like, how can I be guided into like knowing? I don't want to rely on a test because they're giving me this. Da, da, da. I think it's highly important. If I have the time, I'll stop and try to answer those because I think it's so important for people to know where they start. What they do with that is what they were going to do with it anyway.
Sure. No, I think that that's correct. And I'm, yeah, like, yeah, seeing where you are on the map yourself, it's not going to become personal. You can't feel a jolt if it's just this. If you're outlining the dynamics of astrology or something like that.
So I have a question
correct.
for you, if that's okay. I'm
Do it.
curious because you have, from what I've witnessed, unless you're a big faker, you have internet friends who do Enneagram, and you have in-person friends that could sit around your table any time of the day who know Enneagram, live Enneagram, have done work based on the Enneagram, not professional work necessarily, but like their own inner work. What is that like for you, and what has that done for your personal journey? Even if you know, I guess because there's yes, the Enneagram is for you, and if the person across from you is not doing work, that doesn't mean you can't do work, but it must do something and for your own journey when people around you are doing work personalized for them. I'm just curious, like, how having Enneagram friends, whether it's online or, you know, peers, and being able to talk to peers around your own table about it has affected your journey, you know, for better, for worse, in any way, shape, or form, because you have people in person.
Right. I recognize myself as being very fortunate because I experienced the jolt, as it were, of Enneagram discovery at the same time that a buddy of mine who owned a coffee shop was himself going reading books on the topic, and it just so happened that I walked into his coffee shop when he was being lazy, which never happens, by the way. He's never lazy, never just sitting there. I said, "What's this?" He said, "It's a book on Enneagram." I was like, "I just heard about the Enneagram." Mm-hmm. And we started a podcast 4 months later. Very valuable experience for me because so much of the energy of our podcast came out of, I suppose, what I'm searching for here, that there's something really valuable of finding that person who is your peer, who is in essence at somewhat the same level, so that you can grow together. Mm-hmm. and have that kind of experience. Now that a lot of the folks that now I'm in a spot where a lot of my in-person relationships aren't of that sort. Like, I don't want to boast, but I'm kind of ahead now.
Boast, do it.
I'm fairly down the road of doing Enneagram study. And so but that doesn't mean I'm not learning from folks. And obviously, like, actually, a lot of my peers in town are much more mature than I am in terms of their souls. And so there's tons to learn there. In a different kind of way. So I suppose it's the case the in-person element isn't as valuable as I think I would normally think, aside from the fact that, I mean, any communication online can feel like you're playing a guitar with 3 strings. You can get some music out of it, but in-person relationships are just different. So I suppose that's what goes through my mind. What goes through your mind there?
No, I think that's interesting. So I'm a person, like, I love in-person relationships. Like, I don't know if it's the facial cues or just the, you know, I don't know. When I have the opportunity to do a consultation with somebody in Jersey who knows the Enneagram, I'm like, please meet me in person, please. Like, I love that, right? I do think it takes work and effort to try to get that same connection in the online spaces, but I think it's necessary for the sake of not doing it alone. I feel like, too, you know, this is going to sound really like simple or whatever. If you're feeling like lonely and you don't have people to talk to about the Enneagram, just go on some Enneagram content pages and see who's commenting and join in the conversation. You're going to find your people. Sure. People on my page find people all the time. I'm like, I feel like my friends are all becoming friends, and this is the greatest thing. But I think those relationships are necessary to facilitate. If online is your jam, find those very important conversations there. And if in person, which I do believe that finding real life in person, face to face connections, we don't have to have a billion friends. We need to have people who know us, people who see us, people who care about us, and people who know, see, and care about themselves. Having those people in person is highly important too. But I guess the piece that's the bush that I'm beating around is, you know, like, some of my greatest breakthroughs have been friends online who know the Enneagram, who are other coaches, and I just get to talk to them as a friend. I'm like, oh my God, I just learned this about myself right here, right now. But the common denominator is vulnerability in that, right? Is that, even if a screen, if a client is vulnerable in session, it doesn't matter if there's a screen or a paywall, there's breakthrough there. And if I connect with somebody online there and I'm able to be vulnerable, especially, the Enneagram provides such specific language to cut to the freaking chase and put you out of your misery about your vulnerabilities. Like it's question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. And being able to be honest and vulnerable with another person, whether it's online or in front of your face, is what's vital to move out of one stage and into the next. And that's the purpose of the Enneagram, is move out of the stage that you're at and move into the next, move into where you're supposed to be. So I think it's interesting because I'm like, and maybe it's me being a 2, right? And saying, being a very relational person and preferring in-person relationships, but also being able to be like, hey, if I can be vulnerable, I can do this stuff online. But I just think that it's the vulnerability around the Enneagram that is required to be able to do something with it with peers. Because have fun conversations with your friends in person or online alike. I think about the Enneagram and spread the knowledge and do all that stuff. But I think when you want to take it a level deeper, to your point, when you want to get away from just talking about types and monikers and like, it's so 8ish of you. Like when you want to get away from that stuff and actually do and be something different and do something really wonderful with what you're learning, vulnerability is required and can't be bypassed. And that always involves other people.
Yeah. Word about vulnerability, because I think this is correct in terms of I wanted to bring up what are some of the habits that are required or even some of the character traits for making this happen. You have to be the sort of person that this sort of topic can actually do work on. So if one has an anti-growth mindset, can't be vulnerable, isn't very honest, like all of those would work against having this have any value at all. There's an idea that comes at Aristotle that there's really just 3 forms of friendship. There's the sort of friendship where that's useful. You have a relationship with your barber, but you've come, paid them money, they've provided a service, you establish a relationship around the haircut. There's a second sort of friendship that's formed around pleasure. Like you like a certain sort of music, they like a certain sort of music. You can talk about the certain sort of music. You like the same football team. You like, you both like shopping. You both like, etc. And the common pleasure is what anchors you. Aristotle says these are both great, but normally usefulness dries up. Sometimes the pleasure dissipates. Like your favorite band breaks up and then you don't have anything to talk about with that one friend that you used to go to Pearl Jam concerts with. Something like that, right? that was a good Gen X reference right there. There's a third sort of friendship. This is a huge wind up as I'm saying it. There's a third sort of friendship, and it's the friendship that's based around the good life or virtue or character or growth. And that is an everlasting kind of friendship because the good life will always be there. The desire to become more healthy will always be a target. And you'll notice that some of the best relationships that you have are of people who not only themselves are committed to being healthy human beings, but they long for you to be a healthy human being. And in those settings, like if you find the person who you both are somehow attracted to, connected to, look, I'm in this to kind of move forward, then the other virtues begin to spin out of that, of vulnerability. But that with vulnerability comes depth and roots and connection. And then you can really grow something. And at least in my experience, like I can talk to people I went to high school with, at very, very depthy levels, because we already did that. We already cared about each other when we were self-actualizing, and going through. I suppose this is the sort of relationship that I'm trying to think about in terms of Enneagram. It's like when I was first doing this sort of stuff, I had Joe, and Joe and I were going through this together at the same time, and we're bringing up the same conversations and really working through some of the problems. And all of it was elementary, of course, but because we were in it together, we moved from here to there, and it was really valuable. Anyway, that was, again, huge wind up for that pitch.
I like it. Home run.
Pitch was, but it was more. It was to say something that build on what you were saying. That vulnerability, these character traits are essential. What is it that's essential for these sorts of relationships, for this type of growth with you and other people who are essentially at your same level?
So I always say this, you don't actually have to know what you need to do. I think we have it in our heads that if we're going to start getting vulnerable or look for accountability, we have to like know what's wrong, know where the break is, know what we need to be doing different. I don't think that's the case. I think we just need to be willing to admit that things aren't working as they are, and willing to admit that we're willing to do something different than we are. That's the biggest thing. One of the, and being open to what you hear. I think one of the things that I talk to sixes a lot about this in particular, but this applies to any human because anxiety is human, is if somebody around you who knows you and loves you asks you, is XYZ actually what's going on? Please stop and listen to them. Please stop and listen and ask them and go, I'm not sure. Elaborate on that. Or what do you mean? What gives you that impression or something? When it comes to connecting with other people, this is something I tell threes, everybody, eat the fish, spit out the bones. Find someone who isn't impressed by you, doesn't think is so incredibly proud of you, thinks you can will be crushed if you're not the next president, right? But is also not impressed by your image, won't fall for it, doesn't give a crap about your excuses, right? Those are the things that are important. You know what? Babes is do this based on your type. Do this based on your type. If people know you, or if you know your type at all, and because you will, the crap that you use to get away with murder, which we all do. Once we read the Enneagram, that's the first thing that pops out at us is damn, I can't get away with murder now. Those are essentially the things that we're going to have to be willing to do the opposite of to connect with other people about the Enneagram. Now, again, if this is your fun special interest and you are not ready to do something with it, that's okay for a time. But I want you to know that even beautiful, beautiful people, pageant queens who look in the mirror for hours and 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 hours, they get sick. And so looking in the mirror of the Enneagram as a fun knowledge tool without taking it outside yourself to appear to do something with it, it's going to get old. It's going to get old really, really fast. And I'm not saying this to be mean or threaten anybody. There was I did the Enneagram alone for a little bit because even, the friends that had done the quizzes, that it all died off. I was still doing it. I was still looking at the work, and what I was learning about myself but could not change was becoming intolerable. Because truth is truth, right? You know this as a one, right? When you hear truth and it makes you angry, you can't unknow. You cannot unknow. And it became intolerable. And that's why I, not having people in person, that's why I started electing to make these relationships online, because I knew I wrote it down. I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know where the break was, but I was willing to do something different because something was broken. I had to admit that something was broken. So yeah, finding people that don't take your excuses seriously is important. Letting people challenge you is important.
Agreed.
Yeah.
The thing, as you're talking, the thing that ends up hitting me is that your type doesn't change, but the world around you changes, and your reaction to the changing world often is still coming out of your type, but it may expose something different that you haven't had the opportunity to work on just yet. I have, full disclosure, I've had a very difficult time post-COVID relating to a lot of folks who are younger. I used to be fantastic. I was a college professor. I felt like I really was in a groove there. Just have not been able to keep pace with folks who are in their early 20s, which is normally my favorite time of life, the topics and the rest. Part of that is what I perceive as a perception of myself. I'm 6'3". I'm a white male. I'm very large. And I think I put off a vibe that I never have I'm just like, I'm never self-aware really, and I'm just like constantly feeling like self-aware. On these and
You
this may be my own
stressed?
security. What's that?
I said you stressed. Sounds like a
No,
stressor.
it's like it's that. I think there's a cultural story that so like I mean I'm gonna cut this but
I,
anyway,
anyways.
but the point being, what was the point?
Oh, you're scared
the
of
point
you're scared of children after COVID.
Yes. I'm not hanging with the kids anymore. They go to hell. I'm gonna just tend to my yard and my garden like an old man
Get off my
ought to.
lawn.
This is why we care so much about our lawn, is because nobody loves us. The no, it's like this is actually a catalyst for me doing a hard examination about my oneness recently. Like my idealism when it comes to how people ought to engage me is just through the roof, especially if it's the case, and you will be familiar with this kind of thinking, especially if it's the case that I have sacrificed for you consistently and done nothing but care for your needs in my spaces and in your vocation. Like I employ people and treat them very, very well. And don't seem to have a whole lot of harsh expectations. In fact, I have zero harsh expectations. And I like there's a desire to be treated a certain way. I'm just aware that that's not how I'm treated. So, but I'm using this as an example of something that I've had that has been a catalyst for self-examination because I put that through the filter.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a bit, again, I've got these huge wind-ups today, apparently.
You know, you're just very passionate. I heard this thing about ones that like they can sometimes feel like if they put a certain amount of like work or effort into something that they're sort of, plug your ears, entitled to a specific output. And I wonder if that output is, what is this idealized way that people treat you? Is it that they just don't judge you off the bat for being a 6 foot cis white man?
I expect people to be kind and warm because human beings should generally be kind and warm to people who are in their lives.
Then why is what you give in the ring at all from a 2?
Say it again.
Then why is what you're giving in the ring at all, right? Like I treat you well, and if it's the human, yeah.
Oh, why have I got like why do I name the things that have been gifted?
What do they have to do with one another? If the way that you expect to be treated, because it sounds like you called it idealized, but it's not, because it's like, no, decency. I want decency.
Yeah.
Why do you correlate, man, I did so many great things, not favors?
It's just compounding the problem. I actually think people should be warm and generally gracious to one another as a default. But in certain situations, like somebody has actually gone above and beyond for another person and helped them realize, for example, their lifelong dreams, and still. So I suppose it's the case that, like, even when, it's the earner side on this front. Like, even when putting forth best efforts, it's still the case that sometimes the ends desired to achieve, I assess based on execution of ideals, doesn't happen. I need to do work on that, and that's actually what I'm driving towards. I'm not saying that they need to treat me better. I'm saying that this is a catalyst for me having to do self-examination through the prism that I wasn't prepared for. Because I've generally lived my life very well. Thank you very much, Jackie.
You got it, Jeff. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Do you have those? Yeah, like the world has changed and it's exposing something new in my two-ness. That's what I'm more saying.
So being, okay, what's changed in the world in the last couple of years has allowed me to actually draw really specific lines between like being helpful and being needed. I feel like we've talked about that. We talked about that on the 2 podcast. No, it was being desired and being needed and wanted. But you know, being helpful, and because I was not anything, what was the word during COVID? Essential. I wasn't anything essential technically. And so I couldn't actually really be the most helpful I could be was staying the frick inside and going for my safe walk. Like that was the most helpful I could be. But it did get me to admit how much I needed to be needed, because I wanted to rip my skin off. I absolutely wanted to rip my skin off. It also taught me based on or funny enough with this conversation, it taught me a lot about I don't think I'll ever, unfortunately, be removed from, do they like me? Do you think they like me? I don't think that's ever going to go away from me. But I couldn't, I did see the quality of friendships and, peership to be very, very different, because, in the last couple of years, I guess from COVID and on, so many of my relationships sort of pruned themselves, and I didn't have like very many in-person relationships. That's very hard for a 2. That is very hard for a 2. Like but it did get me to admit so many different things about myself that like pride was just keeping from me. Like I needed to be needed so desperately, and I felt like there was something like like the hydraulic press, is that what they're called, where they like smash things real tiny like a bug. I felt like that was on the other side of this like sand timer of not being needed for a certain amount of time, because I felt like I was going to lose my bird. And so that actually, if I'm being very honest, that's sort of what prompted me to start facilitating relationships online, because I had already started coaching. I had, made the Instagram, I started just messaging other coaches just because I knew for a fact they knew the Enneagram, right? Like other Enneagram coaches.
Right. Yeah.
And so, so I think the last couple of years, the way that the world has changed, it got me to admit very important things about myself. But in reality, I needed other people to complete that loop very, very much. And not in the way where 2s need people because it's like oxygen, in the way where every single human being, every single Enneagram type, every single in between, I'm not sure which type, does need other people to help them close the loop. Like, I don't know one person that can reach every part of their back with sunscreen. Don't show me. That's weird. Don't DM me and show me. That's weird. But we need each other, and the world changing taught me that. It taught me that in life. It taught me that in sometimes your responsibility is staying inside and doing nothing. But it also taught me that in the Enneagram, like we need each other to make real change and to do real work. Yeah.
That would be case in point. I think the conversation very helpful in terms of illustrating like what would this look like. And you and I are coming with different motives, different life experiences, or different genders and different generations, and yet we can outline here's how type and the topic of Enneagram inform what growth for me in this season looks like, and it can be incredibly encouraging on that front, as it were. So
I just have one last thing. I think if you stick with things long enough, I think they will surprise you, and the people will surprise you. And I'm a person that's been, you love a lot of people, you're gonna get hurt by a lot of people. So you love hard, you hurt hard. But in the recent like few months, it seems like the area around me literally opens up like a flower, and people are coming out of the woodwork. Even other coaches local. Like I found a coach who lives in my town, in my teeny tiny town in North Jersey, but also knows the Enneagram. And I'm grateful to have stuck with this journey. I'm grateful to not have seen it as, I think my fear, Jeff, is that if we do it without people for so long, it stops feeling like we can do anything with it if we do it just alone. And so stick around with it and let it surprise you, and let people surprise you, and go find some people. Go make some Enneagram friends. That's all I got to say.
That's a good last thought. The twofold, just to close out on exactly that. I just realized this as we're talking that my uncle in the late 70s moved from Bertram, Texas to Spain, and in communist Spain at the time, there was like a civil war at that point in time or something like that. Anyway, he started a business teaching English, and he ended up being like, he has built a business he's like the primary teacher of Spaniards.
Wow.
English. That's what he does. So started a college, but then that's like communicating in a certain way. Then started a radio station, and it's like, here's how you're teaching people through the radio. Most successful thing that they built recently were bars. They created spaces where they serve alcohol, and people show up who just want to speak English. And so you walk in from a Spanish speaking city into these bars, and the servers speak English, the people who are there. And so you have gone to have a little bit, your inhibitions go down a little bit when you get a beer in you. And
that's brilliant.
And you speak the language. As you're speaking through this, that's what was going through my mind, is that Enneagram's language needs to be spoken with others, and this ends up being where actual growth communication takes place. That at least was the illustration that I kind of needed. I don't think we've mentioned this quote yet, but I wanted to put it in here somewhere, and the end is probably the best place to do it, is that Stabile says that Enneagram is individual work that must be done in community. So I suppose my deep intuition is that finding that community, be it one person in town who's also an Enneagram coach, or finding your folks online, as was said, this can be incredibly helpful. So that's what I got. You got anything else?
No, go find community. It's very good for you. It's good for your bones.
Jackie, it's always good talking to you.
Back at you.
I think my score on my score sheet is 3-1, Jeff's profanities versus Jackie's. And so for at least the time being, I'm catching up.
I can't curse. My cat's in here, and she's under 5 years old. She's a baby.
Very thoughtful.